John Whitterick and Ceylon of Get Out of Debt Free. Are you there, gentlemen? Hello.
Ceylon is.
Ceylon is. Oh, you're there. So
yeah.
We haven't got John.
I think his call failed. You might need to invite him again.
Oh, I say. I wonder how we do that. Right. Okay, I think what we will do is ask for another track from the members. John, are you there with us? Hello, John. John,
hello, Alex. Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. We've got that connected. Ceylon, are you there with us?
Yes.
Fantastic. At last, technology will not beat us in the end, so that's pretty good stuff. Right, what I'm going to do now is ask people to grab a pen and paper, because this is the important information that they need to know, and they need to know how to get in touch with the show. And there are text methods and there are email methods. So I'm going to hand over to Zen, and Zen will tell us all about it.
Use your mobile phone to keep in touch with Peterborough FM. Why not text us on 60777. That's 60777. Begin your message with 337PC. That's 337PC. PC for Peterborough Community. A space, then your comment. Standard network text charges apply. Alternatively, send us an email via studio@peterborough.fm. That's studio@peterborough.fm. One station, many communities. And we're waiting to hear from you.
Oh, they're liking the new jingle. They're liking the new jingle. Did you like that, Valerie?
I love it. That was great. You kept that secret and hidden.
Oh, well,
it's fantastic.
I'm all secret and lively.
I love the American Peterborough FM.
Oh, my chum Zen. Yes, my chum. Yes. Right then, John, Ceylon, we have you, and it's been a long time since we've spoken. It was an episode of On the Edge almost 2 years ago, so we last encountered each other. And what we need to do in this very first 5-10 minutes of the show is actually sort of do a Reader's Digest version for people to catch up on what we did in those 40-odd minutes on air on Sky Channel 200. So, gentlemen, the website is getoutofdebtfree.org. That's getoutofdebtfree.org. What brought you into this field? What was it that first got you involved in getting people out of debt free?
Okay, shall I start this one?
Yeah. Why not? Why not, indeed?
Yeah, well, it was. I started the site a little while before I met Ceylon, actually. So what it was, I was, like many people all over the world, actually. I was in debt, and I was feeling. The sort of thing that, I was feeling a little bit nervous, and I was actually feeling quite scared, actually, because I was getting debt collectors chasing me. And I sort of, after a while, I sort of trying to work out why I was getting so nervous and frightened. And I started thinking about it and started looking into it more deeply. Yeah. And what it was, I started realising, I started thinking, well, how come there's so much debt? How come so many people are in debt? And then I realised that, I read a book by Mary Elizabeth Croft, which pretty well explained everything. Yeah. And there's a link to it on the site, actually, on the front page. Yeah. Because without Mary's book, I don't think the site would actually be in the same form it's in at the moment. But what it was, I sort of just realised that the banks haven't actually got any money to give us. We always think that we borrow money. But that's not true. That's not true. And, there have been economists that have actually agreed with it, because basically when you go to a bank to have a loan, it's not them creating the money, it's us creating the money. Because, and when I realised that actually our loan agreement was in fact a promissory note, which they then sell on, they call it securitizing, they've got a posh word for it, but it's actually effectively us creating the funds with our signature. Now, we're giving them the money. Now, I know it's very difficult for people to sort of understand.
Well, at first it's going to be mind-blowing, this is. This is really... Whoa. What do you mean? They're making this money out of thin air?
Well, it's because it goes back historically, because originally we used to trade with chickens and eggs and goats and cows and things like that. But then, of course, it was a lot easier for us to use silver and gold. There's a few other exchanges we used, but silver and gold became the accepted means of exchange. But then, of course, rather than carrying around expensive silver and gold, it's a lot easier to use IOUs.
Right.
Now, the problem is, you see, they took the gold and silver and left us with the IOUs. Now, so, of course, when we're getting a loan, we're giving them an IOU, and they're using that IOU like it's actually gold. But
but there's nothing behind it anymore.
There's nothing behind it, of course. I mean, this is the crazy, crazy thing. Now, the really stupid thing they do, which is why we're in the mess we're in at the moment, which is why today we had the budget and they're trying to, they're searching around for more money to pay back to the bankers, simply because when you lend nothing and charge interest on it, where's that interest come from? It doesn't exist. That's why there's huge amounts of debt, and the actual, the actual amount of debt is far greater than the money supply. Now,
so effectively, if everybody pulled their money out of the banks, well, they couldn't because there isn't enough to go around.
Well, there's only 3% in notes. So even if they
3%?
Even if they printed all those notes, which which they don't, only 3% of the money supply is actually in paper, because most of it's all online. It's very rare that we actually, we might take 20 quid out to go to the pub or whatever, but most of the time we're buying stuff online.
Is this why when Northern Rock had its problems, people trying to withdraw their money, they had to stop them withdrawing because they literally didn't have the funds to be able to cover those withdrawals?
Well, not only do they not have the paper, but they don't actually have the funds effectively to pay out everyone digitally.
Blimey.
Can you see? So if everyone said, so if there was a run on the bank and everybody just did it online, they still wouldn't be able to pay out.
Now this brings us to what was our top news story at the top of the hour, which was the situation in Cyprus, where literally they are trying to impose this sort of circa 10% surcharge on everybody's accounts and all their savings. So again, this is, from what you're saying, this comes from the wrong angle almost, because the money, that 10%, is literally not going to go to anything useful. It's just going to go and pay back banks.
Yes. Well, the thing is, you see, even if they stole everyone's money and, bailed the banks out, in 6 months' time, they're going to have to do it again. Because the problem is, when you create money out of nothing and charge interest on it, two things happen. One, it's the way I try and explain it. I try and explain it really, really simply. When I do a talk, I have a bag of marbles, and I have 10 marbles in a little bag.
Right.
Okay, and I can tie the top up. So I count the 10 marbles, put it back, and then tie the top up. I say, right, is there anyone here that can get 11 marbles out of this bag? And very rare, unless we've got a magician, normally nobody can get the 11th marble, because the 11th marble doesn't exist.
Right.
So with money, what's happening is they're asking for interest on money, but that interest doesn't exist. So the problem is the debt gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but they have to inflate the money supply all the time. And this is why we've got the problem in Cyprus, in Ireland, in every single country, apart from the one or two that have managed to avoid debt.
And Iceland, of course, who have taken a completely different angle on things by not bailing their banks out and prosecuting their bankers for fraud.
They did, and they wrote a new constitution, but you won't see that on the BBC. It's really strange, because their economy is actually getting back to normal. They had a few adjustments to make, but they seem to... And when I actually wrote in The Guardian, I got to write in The Guardian on behalf of the Occupy movement.
Oh, right.
And I suggested we should do the same as Iceland, and I got absolutely hammered. But, there were people actually blogging just to sort of Well, I think I was being attacked actually by certain interest groups whose interest it wasn't in. So the banking system is very, very powerful, and it's very, very much sort of allied to politicians. So yeah, that's why we're in the mess we're in. We haven't got enough currency in circulation to pay off the debts worldwide. That's how crazy. And all the politicians, you know, you've probably seen them on the telly today, because I believe we had. I don't watch the television, but I believe we had a budget today, and they'll be telling us how, you know, we've got to pay off this deficit and whatever, and balance the books. Well, that's not true. We can't. We can never. There's not enough money in circulation to pay off the debts. So we might as well be grown up about it and deal with it, and not bail the banks out anymore.
So, in terms of the website, I mean, perhaps we can bring Ceylon in at this particular point.
He's the expert there.
in terms of the website, what do you actually have there which is of use to people? What will people be intrigued to find when they go and visit?
Well, we have template letters, which are quite easy to use. Somebody that's not used to it should still be able to access the letters, and basically these letters that we supply to the members are basically asking a question. Whether it's a loan, a credit card, almost anything except mortgages. Mortgages, you've got to be very careful and you have to really know what you're doing about. But if it's a loan or credit card or anything like that, then you simply send off a letter, and all the letter asks for is proof that you actually owe something.
Right. Valentine is waving her finger. I better fade her up so she can have a word with you. This is Valentine.
Hello, guys. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us this evening. It's a question, well, first of all, I'll start off with John, because he was giving a very good rundown as to how the money supply operates, and there's quite a lot of detail there in the information that you've given us so far. I wanted to just ask a couple of questions, because I too was one of these people who I wish I would have known about. Well, maybe even 7 years ago you weren't where you are now, but about 7 years ago I found myself in a very difficult situation where I was very much in debt, and I was being hounded by those types who like to hound individuals who are out on a limb. And I found myself backed into a corner and almost pretty much lost everything, including my home. So, 7 years on, I'm getting back on my feet. But there are those out there who might be listening tonight who are finding themselves in this position as we speak. So hopefully this information will be helpful to them. I just wanted to ask, the first question was, in terms of Iceland, I mean, this is a big question because we're talking about a country opposed to an individual. But how has Iceland been able to get away with not giving in to the banksters and basically turning the other direction and doing it their way, rather than going down the road like Greece or Cyprus or Ireland and many other countries that would be following them in the next few years? How have they managed to get away with what they did?
Okay, well, my understanding of this, it's quite a small country. I mean, the population is, I'm not an expert on Iceland, but it's quite a small population. And when, the crap hit the fan, basically the people really rose up. And they rose up really united. Being a fairly small community, it's much easier to get everyone together. And what they did, they said, no, we're not going ahead. I think, when people are pushed a little bit too far, as, it looks like they're being pushed in Cyprus, people tend to get together. But what happened is they got together, and they even got, they had a few sort of demonstrations, and they even got the police on side, which was remarkable. So the government was very, very weak, and that actually challenged the banks. I mean, historically they had nationalised banks, and then what they did, they were told that it'd be far better if they actually privatised their banks. And this is where the mess actually, started. But ultimately, they borrowed money. They owed the IMF an awful lot of money, and the IMF were making huge threats to Iceland. If they defaulted. But basically, the people, the government is supposed to do what the people want, not what the banks want. Now, if you had, if we actually had a poll and we decided, do we want to bail out the banks or let them go bankrupt and deal with it? I'm sure most people would say, no, we're not bailing out the banks. And, in Cyprus, I don't think we'd have to have, even the politicians in Cyprus are saying, no, we're not doing it. We're not going to do what Euro MPs want, basically on behalf of the central banks. So I think it was because the politicians actually did what the people wanted. And at the end of the day, that's what politicians are supposed to do.
Well, that's what happens. Yes, that's what happens in a country where the corruption isn't off the charts. And
yes.
I suppose we can say, and I think it's very clear for people to see now, as we get further and further down this rabbit hole of debt with sovereign nations, that what we are dealing with, because I think also there is a misconception amongst the average person, which is when they're seeing these bailouts, they're thinking that the country is going to get bailed out, there's going to be help, and we're going to get back on track. And what we're not understanding is that it's not about the countries necessarily, it's about bailing out the banks or these big corporations or companies, and it only suits their needs and it doesn't suit our needs. And that's where the level of corruption obviously is very high compared to maybe Iceland's situation.
That's right. In Iceland, what was remarkable is obviously they had a housing market where, it's like we had in the 80s, where suddenly, the house prices dropped and people were left in negative equity, where they actually ended up paying mortgages which were, much higher than the value of the house. And they couldn't get out of it without losing money. So what they did in Iceland is actually revalued people's mortgages to the current house prices. Because what they said the banks created the boom and bust, so the people shouldn't pay for it. So really, if we're going to have bailouts, let's let the banks go bankrupt, and anyone that loses their savings, let's bail them out. Because it's easy enough to set up a new bank. And perhaps if we set up new banks, we could set them up in a way where they didn't create money out of thin air. And we don't need banks creating money. The government, the great thing is, governments can create money which is debt-free, so it doesn't need interest paying on it. So this is the remarkable thing. And I come from a little island in Guernsey, and anyone that's interested, I'd suggest they Google something called the Guernsey experiment. And it was in about the early 1800s, where the government basically didn't borrow money off the bankers because it was already in debt to the bankers, and they got themselves out of a severe economic problem after the Napoleonic Wars by creating money itself, creating money, debt-free money, which it put into the economy, and then it took it out again, by which time the economy was doing very well. It was only the banks that actually stopped it carrying on. So there are ways out. Historically, governments historically have created money itself without banks. But the Bank of England is a private bank, just like the Federal Reserve, the IMF, and the Central European Bank. They're all private banks which make a profit out of taxpayers.
Okay, it's 18 minutes to 9. We're looking for your input out there, ladies and gentlemen, into this part of the programme. We're going to remind you of how to text us and email us in just a short moment. But the sort of questions we're looking for from your good selves, have you a particular problem with a loan and people are being unreasonable? The lenders are squeezing the pips out of you, as it were. Are you wondering what you can do in that situation? situation? Are you getting bugged by traffic wardens or whatever their names are now in terms of parking tickets? And what can you do about parking tickets? Is there anything? Is that the sort of thing you would like to find out more about? Let's hear what problems you have on the financial front which seem insoluble, and whether the gang from getoutofdebtfree.org can assist you. That will be after this short break, and here's how you get in touch with us.
Use your mobile.
The lad's holiday could have been great.
One night I got so hammered I cracked my head open and went to hospital.
I had to take him in. Cost me €100.
Then we got in...
16 minutes to 9 o'clock. You're with Red Alert Radio on Peterborough FM. We're here with John and Ceylon from Get Out of Debt Free. So, gentlemen, in terms of, let's say, I mentioned parking tickets, and I know that people's eyes would have lit up at parking tickets because they seem to be more and more prevalent than usual. What's the gen with parking tickets? Do we have to pay them? Is there a technique that we should adopt?
Well, this is where the problem starts. Everyone thinks a parking ticket is a parking ticket. In actual fact, it's not. It's an offer of a contract.
Right.
Now, when I first started dealing with parking tickets, it was dead easy. Mm-hmm. You just take the parking ticket, right across it in red ink at a 45-degree angle, refuse for cause without admission of guilt, and all that, and a few other lines to do, and I'd send it off, and we'd get back a letter saying, due to a technical error, your ticket's been cancelled.
Right.
Now, of course, what I did is I told everybody what I was doing. Mm-hmm. So everybody all over the country started doing it. Mm-hmm. And the council suddenly realised that everyone was waking up to the fact they were being ripped off. It's basically robbery.
Yeah.
You pay tax on your car, you pay tax on your phone. It's just another way of robbing you. Mm-hmm. So the councils decided, in their infinite wisdom, that they were going to totally ignore contract law.
Right.
And by doing so, they're actually breaking the law themselves. But when you understand how corrupt the system is, that means absolutely nothing to them. So now they ignore contract law and they just send it off to Northampton Bulk Centre. Mm-hmm. And then you have to understand what Northampton Bulk Centre is.
Right.
They claim to be a court. In actual fact, they're not. Mm-hmm. There's several calls on YouTube where disgruntled members of the public have phoned up and asked them a few questions like,
yep.
Are there any judges there? Of course there's not. Are there anyone trained in court rules there? And the answer's always no. And that's because it's not a court at all. It's a room where a private members club room, I hasten to add, because I tried joining and basically I wasn't in their club, so they chucked me out.
Oh, lovely.
And they just stamp documents.
Right.
They stamp them. Nobody will ever sign these documents, or they like to call them warrants of execution. Mm-hmm. Now, thankfully, we're in the UK, because in the States that has a different sort of meaning. Over here, it just means that a warrant of execution means that a bailiff can come and knock on your door and say, pay up. Although they may do it aggressively, and they may baffle you with under rule blah, 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 or section of this, of that. It's just a load of waffle.
Right.
They just rely on the fact that you don't know it. Mm-hmm. So when they changed tact and started ignoring everything, we started looking into things a little deeper, and we found that a denial of access is a very, very powerful document. Right. We've got the case law printed on the site where, for instance, I'm not suggesting by any way, shape or form you should use this, but there is case law where somebody, a bailiff acting on a warrant of execution, which again, of course, won't be signed, and so if they do act on it, they're actually breaking the law, and somebody actually hit the bailiff over the head with a milk bottle. That by itself should tell you how long ago we're going back here.
Yeah.
The guy never got... Oh, well, I say guy, it could be a girl. Whoever it was never got done for it, because as soon as the bailiff stepped out of line by stepping on your property, they were then trespassing and they were criminals. And it was perfectly legitimate and legal to hit one over the head with a milk bottle. Now, again, I say don't do this, but...
You're defending your property, but they don't like us defending our property these days.
They rely on us not knowing the rules.
Right.
And we've done our best on Get Out of Debt to show everyone the case law. Now, case law is what judges go on. This is why this being never actually got done for it, because it had come up previously and at a high court, and the judge had ruled the bailiff had acted illegally, so therefore he got what he deserved. He was basically one step away from being a burglar.
Right.
And there's another bit of case law where it says that you're perfectly allowed to give them a good slap. Again, you can see these case laws on the site. It's absolutely true. So we started using the denial of access. Now, I'm sure you remember the amount of tickets I showed you.
Oh, handfuls and handfuls, yes.
Well, it went up even higher.
Oh, lovely.
And to this day, I've still never paid one. They sent letters, threatening letters. Now, you have to understand with these letters, they are designed using neuro-linguistic programming.
Oh, NLP, as it's known by its benefactors, yes.
Well, I didn't use the abbreviation because some of the listeners may not know what that means.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I would have probably spelled it out for you. So one way or another, we've got both bases covered. So we've engaged with the hoi polloi as well as everybody else. So that's not bad.
Yeah. Well, like I say, I got a stack full of letters that were original. They've stopped writing to me now. They stopped over a year ago when they realised that I actually knew what I was talking about and wasn't going to pay them a penny. Because at the end of the day, they're just in it for what they can steal off you.
And this gets down to the territory of finding out that every police force in the country, in fact, every public body is in fact a corporation. They're all registered on Dun and Bradstreet, and the objective of a corporation is to make profits.
Absolutely.
And Valentine's waving at me again.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and just pick up on this point with the parking tickets. I wanted to ask, does this go for speeding tickets as well? Because there seems to be quite a bit of this going on at the moment where people get speeding tickets, and then if they can either pay them or they can go and do this course which costs something like £80, and they'll take the points off your license, and it's just another big con game and you get stuck into it. Have you found with your work and research that you can use maybe some of these same elements for speeding tickets?
Not as such on the site at the moment. We have had I think around about 3 speeding tickets kicked out simply for the questions we've asked, but I haven't actually put that up on the site yet because I want a couple more to prove that it works before I'll put it out, because the last thing you want is everybody. And by the way, I don't endorse speeding any way, shape or form, but if you're travelling down a motorway with no cars at, say, 80, 90, 100 miles an hour at, like, 3 in the morning, well, there's no one else on the road, and as long as you don't injure anybody, then I don't see a problem with that. Well, if, however, you're travelling, say, by a school and you're speeding, well, I really hope you do get a ticket and you do get done severely for that.
I mean, the basis of common law is do no harm. So if you are not doing harm or not likely to do harm with your actions, it's a different thing. Hence the thing of empty roads or outside a school. One of those you're more likely to do harm, so consequently would fall foul of common law.
Absolutely.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, many people find themselves caught out with speeding cameras and they're barely going over the speed limit and they're not really causing danger in that way. But I just have to share a funny thing with you, because there was a speeding gun thing, whatever you call it, which is on a route that I travel on quite regularly. And obviously they really annoyed this one person because they went and burnt it. And I've never seen that before. The actual speed machine literally burnt to cinders.
That happens in quite a few places.
Yeah, that was the first time I've seen it. So obviously it's something that is really winding people up.
And Pedro is waving now. Pedro!
Oh, right. Okay, well, thank you guys for obviously being on our show as well. I would just like to bring in also this issue with the help. Obviously, a lot of people do get into debt for all different reasons, and when it comes down to looking for help, they obviously sometimes go to the Citizen Advice Bureau, which obviously have been disappearing all over the country.
Stop sniggering in the background, gentlemen, at the Citizens Advice
Sorry.
The Citizens Advice Bureau, because it's something that they feel that they've had that in the past, is something that's sort of local. And what has happened, obviously those centres have been disappearing, and they've been underfunded, and of course they have limitations. Then also, of course, people normally tend to look for the national that helpline, those places they can call, and actually having been on the end of that particular situation, I know that the only thing they can do is normally say, make a list and send us a list of your expenditure and your earnings, and then we'll help you out to basically household keeping, household bookkeeping, and that's not really enough. And obviously, when you start looking into this, how, for instance, sometimes credit card companies later on, a few months perhaps after you've made certain agreements, propose to cut some of your debt down by £300 or bulks of money like that. You start wondering, well, really? So are you just going to forgive £300 all of a sudden? So maybe this money is not really real money. Maybe there's something here, and so I just wanted really to put that out there, that perhaps looking into getting out of debt free does really provide another solution.
Go on.
the biggest discount I was offered was on a £2,000 just over a £2,000 credit card bill, which was a card that had actually been stolen, but they still came after me for it, and by this time I was well aware of how the system worked and dispatched them with no end. So they were saying, if you, this 2,000 and it was a couple of hundred, I think, if you pay just 20%, we'll write this debt off. So if I pay 400 for a 2,000, probably £200 loan, they're going to write it off. Now, you've got to wonder, how could they afford to lose £1,800? And the reason is, of course, because it doesn't exist in the first place.
That's right. And of course, the whole idea. I do agree with the whole idea of a fractional reserve that you were putting your criticism across about, and I do agree, of course, with everything you've said there. And of course, the whole thing hinges on this principle of agreement, isn't it? There's this everyone in the system is bound to that. Basically to that rule of the game, which is we all pretend to accept that principle, that the interest is charged on the privilege of using money that's circulating. But of course, yes, that money is created out of nothing, and the most damaging thing of all is really the interest associated with that. And if I can just make one quick point, is that some examples, as was mentioned earlier, you guys talking about Jersey, the experiment in Guernsey, and I believe this probably has to do with perhaps having money circulated with no interest. That has happened exactly in America. You've got Abraham Lincoln used the greenbacks, and of course they had no interest behind it. You have Thomas Jefferson also used that. John F. Kennedy also did the same thing, and Benjamin Franklin. So of course, and every attempt was also rebutted, and after a while, he went back to the normal interest-based currencies. So both on the greenback and on the script.
There's certainly some theory that JFK, one of the major reasons for him being assassinated, was actually trying to rip control of the financial system out of the hands of the Federal Reserve again.
It was the bill 11110.
Actually, he was doing two things. Yes, one, he was going to start printing his own money. Mm-hmm. This was one of the major reasons they killed him. Plus, he was also going to legalise marijuana.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, well.
But you know what? But because you know why? Because John F. Kennedy suffered very badly with pain, physical pain. So it might have been for therapeutical. Yeah, because he had quite a few ailments, so it might have been for that. You know, he was quite ahead of his time in terms of understanding how certain things work. Anyway.
Which makes you a dangerous man.
Mm-hmm.
I think Queen Victoria as well used marijuana for medicinal purposes.
Yes, she did.
That's correct. Yeah.
Well, the churches, this is like hundreds of years ago, when they used to anoint you, they actually used to use marijuana oil then.
That's interesting.
Oh, well, in the words of Jack Regan, get your trousers on, you're nicked. Anyway, we're just coming up to the end of our first hour. We do welcome you getting in touch with us here at Peterborough FM. Why not just email the studio@peterborough.fm with your questions for the Get Out of Debt Free guys. And we will be back after this very short commercial break.
Away the lies, leaving the truth exposed, revealing all the conspiracies and throwing out the theories. Find out the reality and truth behind the news headlines. And now, stand by for action. Strap yourselves in. This is going to be a bumpy ride.
1 minute after 9, you're with Peterborough FM. It is Red Alert Radio, and we are talking how to get out of debt free with John Witterick and Ceylon. So, gentlemen, I have to sort of go off script a little bit because it's something rather nasty happened down in Port Talbot, I believe, Ceylon. So, Ceylon, can you give us a bit of background? What on earth went on, and how are you today?
Well, I'm still suffering from concussion.
Lordy.
And I went out with my mate today. I don't know if you've seen any of the videos that we put out on YouTube, but if not, you can check out Sri Lanka Sea, all one word. Mm-hmm. That's a friend's YouTube channel that puts stuff up for me.
Yeah.
And basically, we got notified on Friday that there was going to be an eviction in Port Talbot on Monday.
It's Monday just gone?
Yes, yes.
Blimey. Talk about sort of right on the news cusp here. Fantastic. Well, not fantastic in terms of it happening, but we're here in the right place at the right time. So so you made your way down to Port Talbot then to sort of observe, provide expert witness. What was your role?
Well, I was there to assist other fellows and women to simply peacefully say, no, you're not allowed in. We're not letting you in. We've got voidmortgage.com. You should get onto that site. It's run by some guys I know, and they are top blokes, all of them.
Yeah.
And they've got video footage where, without giving too much away, basically... on the 4th of March, that was a Monday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of that week, I wasn't involved in them all. It was the other guys, and I'm sure that everyone that knows them knows how good they all were. But we stopped 7 evictions in 1 week.
Wow.
We basically just stood up and said, we're not letting you in. No. And 7 evictions were stopped. Mm-hmm. And then on the 18th, which was Monday, well, actually, like I said, on the Friday we found out about it. On the Saturday I was talking to people and trying to figure out how I could get down there. The John, whose home it was,
right,
basically said, I'll cover your travel expenses. Mm-hmm. And so, well, as soon as he said that was no problem, I was down and booked the ticket, and I went down Sunday, mm-hmm. as did if anyone that goes on YouTube will probably have heard of Psychodriller, top bloke.
Psychodriller.
Yes.
I'm writing all these down so we can put a reference section on our show page at redalertradio.co.uk. I should note at redalertradio.co.uk, if you look for the show notes, you will see links for all the news stories that we had at the top of the hour, so that you can see that we're not making it up. Anyway, please continue your story. You're there in Port Talbot, and I assume are we on Monday morning now, the day of the eviction?
Yeah, I stopped at some people. Some were happy to put me up for the night, so I would never have made it. Otherwise, on the Monday. So some friends I have down there actually put me up for the night. not in Portugal, but it was about an hour away, but it was great to catch up with them. And then on the Monday, the eviction was scheduled for 11 o'clock.
Right.
So we set off at about 9:30, 10 o'clock-ish. I'm a little bit blurred about it, simply because of the concussion that
Sure.
I'm still suffering from.
Sure.
We got there for about 20 to 11, and there was 2 locksmiths there, and then around about 10 to a car pulled up with 3 bailiffs, alleged bailiffs, I hasten to add, because no one would identify themselves or show any of us any paperwork, including the warrant.
No paperwork at all?
None whatsoever that we were shown.
Right.
I hasten to say that we were shown. Anyway, there was 8 of us in total. John, whose home it was, he was barricaded in his home, and that left 7 of us outside. Now there was 2 entrances, a front and a back gate, so we had to have 2 on the back gate, and we had 5 on the front gate. Now on the front gate was, I'm not going to mention all the names because I know that some of them don't actually want to be known that much.
Right.
But there was myself and Gary, psychodriller. There was 2 other women members of Get Out of Debt Free. Kitty Bell was one of them. I won't mention the other one. And there was Kitty Bell's husband. Again, some of them don't want to mention, and those that have mentioned, that's not the real names anyway.
Sure.
So at 11 o'clock comes, and we've got 5 of us in front of this gate. Basically, if you don't let them in, they can't get in. So the 2 locksmiths came down to and I must point out here, this is only what I remember. Everyone's version will be slightly different, so this is just my memory.
It's all a matter
lot
of
of it
perspective.
has only come back
Sure.
today, a lot of stuff that went off.
Yeah.
So the 3 bailiffs and 2 locksmiths come towards us, and the 2 locksmiths start attacking us straight away, basically dragging us, grabbing us, pushing us all over the place, and it got, well, disturbing to say the least. I was concerned that the women were being knocked around.
Really?
Not just the fact that we were being knocked. It was, I mean, these are some top blokes that go push and pull and barge women about. I got dragged onto the stones, and somehow I managed to get back up.
Yeah.
And then next thing I know, I'm going backwards because Nathan, the biggest criminal that was there on the day, sorry, he'd grabbed me by my hair and was dragging me backwards. This went on for, again, I'm not sure how long it went on. It seemed to be for ages.
Yeah.
Then it got to the point where the bailiffs, now these are the guys trying to gain entry that are supposed to be officially there, actually were dragging the 2 locksmiths off because they could see they were having too much fun.
The locksmiths were having fun?
They were the ones that were kicking 7 bells out of us.
So these people weren't even bailiffs?
No. We don't.
This is a pair of locksmiths who were basically doing little more than being football hooligans, effectively.
Well, I mean, I went to football in the 80s and 90s, and I've seen some fights in that.
Yeah.
And even the football hooligans have some honour. You know, they wouldn't go and beat one guy up, or they might give him a little slap, but they wouldn't all jump and pounce. It was just total abuse. And I also have to add, we don't know any of the names. No one would identify themselves. All the bailiffs had was like a little badge saying, I'm a bailiff, and I can do whatever I like. And like I say, it got to the point where the 3 bailiffs actually dragged them 2 guys off because bailiffs, I'm just guessing that they saw how violent it was and didn't want to be associated, or at least wanted to stop. So they actually dragged them off. This was before the police turned up.
So the police actually were called and did appear then?
Yes, one of the ladies called the police to report what had happened about. Well, again, I'm not sure of the timing because my head's still all over the place.
Sure.
They eventually turned up and they went straight over to the bailiffs, even though it was reported by a woman. And there were no women bailiffs there, by the way.
So they went straight away towards the people who were causing the agitation rather than the people who had been, well, let's for want of a word say, being wronged.
Yes, yeah. You use your words, I'll use mine, and mine were being beaten up.
Sure. And what police action was taken? Did they do anything?
Well, the two, I don't like to call them police constables because they were anything but.
Officers,
they came and talked to us for a while, and it got to the point where now that the police were sort of involved, the bailiffs and the bully boys, well, I'd call them what they are, the criminals, Nathan and his mate, they didn't want to do anything in front of the police. So a standoff happened, and this carried on. We were talking to the police all the while. We were reading the case law to them, Fisher and Lightwood, which basically says you can only take possession of a home peaceably, which means no violence. And this is case law. We also pointed out the rules that bailiffs have to adhere to, and that is that they can't use violence. Well, we talked, by this time, I'm not sure if it was a chief inspector, a chief constable, or what it was, but it was a chief something turned up. And he basically said, well, they've got a warrant, and, and we said, is it signed? He says, well, it's got a stamp on it. It's stamped, so, yes, it's got it signed to me.
I mean, this is the thing, just to clarify this for people, any documentation like this actually has to have a physical in-ink signature. A stamp is no good.
Yes.
A pre-printed signature is no good. It has to be the real McCoy from a genuine living human being.
Well, that's the thing. They've been getting away with it for so long that they were happy to carry on. And the police, unfortunately, don't know the law anyway. You ask any copper about law, and he'll may have a brief understanding, but they don't know the law.
Right.
Now, as soon as he said that, well, basically, it's obvious to anyone like yourself that knows it has to have a wet ink signature. It's not valid. And the reason, this is, I'm going off subject slightly here, but the reason it has a stamp of some signature is because whoever acts on it then, they're totally liable. Because whoever pretended they was going to sign it and didn't really sign it, this is why they don't sign them, by the way, is because if they sign them, they have to say that everything in this document is legal. And I'm signing, giving myself full liability. If it's not, I will take the responsibility. And this is why they don't sign the warrants.
So, I mean, just to sort of where we're at with the story, what's the next course of action? I assume that there's some sort of action to be taken against any of these people that you can identify by one means or another.
I can't discuss it as yet, as it's an ongoing subject that we're deciding which action to take.
I'm with you. And of course, the thing is, I noticed on your forums there was various discussions about the fact that it is probably the case that people such as these, who are acting as bailiffs and maybe even locksmiths, who knows, are actually now trying to sort of roll their sleeves up and understand what's going on by reading websites such as your own.
Well, you'd like to think so, but again, I hasten to add, they realised there was only 5 of us at the front gate, so they simply called more bailiffs. So when it had come to the point where they were going to get through no matter what, the police... Now remember, the police's job is to prevent a breach of the peace.
Yep.
The police basically says, well, we're going to let them try to gain entry. And so at this point we know... Well, we've got to stand here and just basically say, you're not going past us no matter how much they push or pull or whatever. I jumped over the gate so that if anyone did get in, I could hopefully try and push them back. Because it's a law that you can actually use an equal amount of force that's being used against you, you can use to defend yourself. So if they're trying to climb over the wall, you can push them back.
Yeah.
340 comes and the 10 bailiffs, I'm just roughly guessing at around about 10 because my memory is still not recovered fully. And the 2 criminals, Nathan and his mate, they started walking towards us. We knew after the first assault where I actually had my camera during the first assault and was filming as being knocked over left, right and centre. And I had that for, as you'll find out in a moment. So they start to come towards us now. Now, again, my memory is a little blurred on who was actually at the gate. I know Gary was, psychodriller. I think there was another lad there. There was definitely 2 girls there. And forgive me if I forget whose name it was. And we also had a cameraman there. And I'm not going to mention his name because he hasn't said whether he wants to be known or not. But anyway, he was filming totally separately with a professional camera.
Yep.
And as he did the first time. So they come again and basically they start kicking, shoving, shoulder barging the women. Then they get to Gary.
Yep.
And the only reason I say this is because I was behind the gate and I can only see limited bits of what was going off. They start lifting Gary by his legs and trying to chuck him over the fence backwards. As this is going on, Nathan the criminal, he's come round because the neighbours have given permission to go on their property to gain access. So he jumps over the fence with his crowbar in one hand and his claw hammer in the other at me. And as I try and push him back, he's swinging. Well, it's scary when there's a 6'5" bloke coming at you and he's got a claw hammer in one hand and a crowbar in the other. But I did my best to try and fend him off, should I say.
Yep.
He eventually somehow gets me to the floor and he's giving me a good beating is the best way I can describe it. And he's also trying to grab my camera. Now, my camera was round a little a thing that comes with a camera that you can put round your wrist so you don't drop it. And I also had it in my clutches. And he's trying to wrench it out of my hands. And eventually, he somehow gets it out. I'm a little bit battered and bewildered by this point. He eventually gets my camera and he yanks it out my hand and it comes up above the wall so those that are actually watching can see this happening. They can see he's got my camera. Perfectly working, only a 3 or 4 month old video camera. And you can't see where he puts it, but it gives the impression that he's putting it into his pocket.
Right.
He does it rather quick because he doesn't want anyone to see this. Now, by this time, the guys and girls at the front have been kicked, and I can't swear, but I could. I really should, but I don't do swearing very often.
Sure.
It takes something to really get me, and this did really get me. But they are being knocked about like nobody's business. Some have got cut eyes, bruises everywhere. Eventually, the guy who's Nathan the criminal, he's eventually got up from me, and somebody points out that there's 2 other bailiffs going round into this guy's garden to jump out. It's only a 3-foot wall, so they get over dead easy. So I've got a choice of either stay here and try and stop this guy. By the way, by this time he's got his neck round, his arm round Gary's neck, and he's trying to pull him over the gate backwards.
Good Lord.
And I do try and stop him for a brief while until the other 2 bailiffs are going round. So I goes dashing round the side of the house to try and knock them back, and the first one jumps on the wall and I shove him back. The next one jumps on the wall and I can't remember if I push him back or whether or not, because again I got a lot of bangs to my head and my memory is a bit shaky.
Sure.
As I am around either the first or second guy, the fence has gone, the gate has gone by this time, and they've come streaming through. And as I'm still either trying to push or pushing the second guy, one of them grabs the back of my hood and yanks me backwards and sends me flying into the wall, and then another one, or the same one, it could be the same one, I don't know. So it grabs me and pins me there as the rest then carry on. But I forgot to mention, and like I say, you'll have to forgive me for this, but my memory is a bit all over the place. While he had me pinned on the floor, Nathan the criminal, I pointed out he was trying to get my camera out, and even when he had actually got it, he was trying to undo it to take out the memory card because of the first assault.
Right. So they're basically trying to seize the evidence.
Yes. Yeah. Now, like I said, we have got him where he's coming up and he's put it into his pocket. And of course, all the other stuff's going on, so it's a crazy situation at the time. You've got guys that aren't allowed to use violence, beating men and women up, and I must say, the thing that upset me the most was the fact they were beating women up. I mean, because and they were all men. Well, men. They were boys. Yeah. They were. I tell you what, it looked like a group of football hooligans out on the rampage. That's the type of blokes that were there. Yeah. The first 3 bailiffs that came, again, none of them would identify themselves. They were middle to late 40s or 50 age blokes, and you know they have some moral dignity in them, and that's why they took the criminals away in the first place.
Sure.
So at this stage, man, my head's ringing because I don't know I can't remember if I've been banged on the wall or my head or whatever. But eventually, I managed to get the bailiff off me, but it's too late because they're already at the actual window where John is stood behind. And I'm fuming by this time because I've basically been beaten up. Sure, and the cops, and I think, again, I can't remember if I said this earlier, but during the initial attack after about 3:40, the cameraman is that amazed at what's going on. He turns round to see where the superintendent and his, I don't know what he was, or he might have even been a superintendent, but he had 3 pits on his shoulders, is all I can remember, and his mate. And
I think that means he can read and write with 3, I think, yeah.
Well, and the 2 PCs. So within the first minute or so of them starting to kick us in, the cameraman turns around to see what the cops are doing, and all 4 cops are stood at the end of the driveway with their backs to us. They're looking up the road.
So they're not watching, so they cannot witness what is going on?
Yes.
Marvellous. Absolutely incredible. It's 21 after 9. We need to take a very, very short break, but we'll be back with the conclusion of this story and what happens next. And also, we have a question from one of our listeners. So we'll hear all about that very, very shortly.
You don't need your radio or your PC to listen to Peterborough FM. Use your smartphone instead. Just use your browser and connect to www.peterborough.fm and click Listen Live.
Peterborough FM, the station that listens to you.
Find out what's going on in your city. The City Buzz Show with Brian Watson. Tuesdays and Thursdays on www.peterborough.fm. One station, many communities.
Right, lads, big match today. Time to warm up. Oi, where are you going? Trev, shut that door. Wixie, turn the thermostat up to 21.
There are lots of ways to warm up this winter, like keeping your heating between 18 and 21 degrees and closing doors and curtains. Find out more at direct.gov.uk/keep-warm-keep-well.
You're listening to www.peterborough.fm. One station, many communities.
23 minutes after 9 on Red Alert Radio. We're here with John Witterick and at the moment Ceylon, who has been going through the story of the incredible level of violence towards people trying to uphold the law, it has to be said. And we're not talking about police upholding the law. We are talking about concerned citizens upholding the law at an incident which happened this Monday in Talbot. So, Ceylon, you've got the scenario that police are looking down the street away from what's actually going on, so that they aren't witnesses to what's happening. So, I mean, rounding up the story, you're all battered and bruised.
Yes.
How does the day conclude?
Well, I'm fuming that my camera's been stolen for a start. So I go up to the chief, whatever he is, and report it. And they all say, we'll deal with it later. They're basically just brushing it aside. A theft. Someone has physically stolen my camera, and the cops aren't even interested in even looking into it.
Yeah.
And as I'm saying it, one of the bailiffs comes back, oh, we found your camera. It's by the door, which is about 100 or so metres from where he actually stole it in the first place.
Right.
It's smashed to bits. Now, there was no damage in it whatsoever when he first stole it from me. So he's deliberately smashed it to bits. Yep. And strangely enough, the battery pack part is open and the memory card's fallen out.
Okay, so this is somebody who knows enough about these gadgets to know where the valuable gizmo is within it.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder how many times he's done this.
Right.
Anyway, by this time, I'm actually that shaken, and like I said, I mean, I am. No, well, I'm sure as you know, Alex, that from the show, when I do start talking, I can talk and talk and talk. And after the first assault, I was so shocked. Even the others there noticed how quiet I was, and that's because I was in shock.
Yeah.
But while I'm talking to the chief, whatever he is, Nathan the criminal is now at a window which is the size of a door with roughly 10 to 12 panes of glass in it, and he's on the phone speaking to, well, I'd like to know who he was speaking to, because that guy's in some deep, deep trouble. He's asking for permission to smash the window. And
whoa. So let's get this right. Who is asking whom to smash windows?
Nathan the criminal is asking whoever he's talking to if he has permission to smash the window.
So we're talking about whoever the boss man is, whoever's actually leading the operation.
That's absolutely, totally, 100% liable, along with the rest of them, because they're all liable for their actions, and they all committed crimes on that day. And Kitty Bell is filming him, and she asks who he's speaking to, and he, as far as I can remember, basically tells her to
go
swear
forth and multiply.
Away. And then Gary, he says, "You're a criminal, Nathan." And he's going for Gary again. Yeah. Gary, by this stage, has got a gash above his eye. But he's going for... And another Bailey steps in to stop. I'm telling you, this guy was either on drugs or needs some serious psychiatric help. He was like a
beast possessed, basically, from the sound of it. Yeah.
Anyway, he's still on the phone that's glued to his ear with his crowbar in his hand, and he's asking, and eventually whoever it is says, yes, you can smash the window. Now... Jonathan, John is behind the window, and he's filming it, and Nathan is giving him the middle finger all the time, and then he gets the yes, so he gets his crowbar, just smashes straight through the window, all the way down, all the different panes, then across, and then he goes back up to the top and smashes all the way down again. Now, under bailiff rules, you are only allowed to take peaceful possession. Now,
you cannot use force, basically. Yes, is the bottom line. I mean, they can't even push past you, isn't it? This is how it.
If they push you, that's assault. Well, I can tell you from the bruises and cuts and that I've seen on the other brave beings that were there defending. It was a little bit more than a push or a pull out the way. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Now the cameraman, he's still filming all this. And the superintendent's number 2, whatever you want to call him, is there watching this. And the cameraman actually turns around and says, "Is this peaceful possession?" And, of course, the cop knows it isn't, so he just totally ignores him, doesn't even bother to answer. Eventually, they get everybody away. I mean, we were all in total shock at the time, I must say. And so was John. It was the last thing it was so violent, it was horrific. It really, and when the videos come out, and they are coming out soon, they have to, because it is just ridiculous. We all sort of gathered afterwards and had a little bit of a chat and talk, but we were all still in shock. And the ladies who I've spoken to since, and I pointed out, it wasn't till 11:24 that evening I actually came out of shock.
Yeah.
I was sat on the settee. I'd just finished talking to the cameraman, about half an hour ago, and I was sat there just thinking about what had gone off.
Yeah.
And then I suddenly realised how bad it was, and that was what actually brought me back out of shock. And I pointed to the ladies and the men that were there that they could still be in shock. And one of them confirmed to me today that they realised they had been in shock. And the other lady, she's been crying ever since, because it was so traumatic.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Well, I mean, what comes into my mind is I've certainly seen clips on YouTube of other attempted repossessions by bailiffs where the police have got involved and are knowledgeable enough about the law to appreciate what is being told to them and effectively tell the bailiffs they can't do anything.
Yes.
And yet it seems to be what we have here is the complete opposite, where it's almost like these people knew what resistance they were going to come up against, probably by watching the self-same YouTube videos that I have, where you actually see chapter and verse of what is the law and what can and cannot be done, and have basically gone, well, we're just going to march right over the top of those. So it's almost like they're informed and they're going to make a stand here, so that it can actually be almost put up on YouTube as an example to others. Don't mess with us, because this is how we're going to treat it in the future.
Well, I mean, this is only my opinion on this. I absolutely believe that the cops said, right, we're just going to turn our backs, you go do what you want to do, but try not to kill anyone. And that's a very scary situation, because there could very easily have been deaths involved in this. I mean, for a start, a guy coming at you with a claw hammer in one hand and a crowbar in the other is terrifying by itself.
No, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
he was he'd already proved he was very violent from the morning session. While he let's just come back to my mind, actually. While he had me pinned to the ground and was trying to steal my camera, he said to me, I'm going to break your fucking... Excuse me. I'm going to break your jaw. But I was using his actual full words there.
Yeah. Well, we are post-watershed, so we should be all right on that. Anyway, I want to move it on, because I'm aware that there possibly people out there wanting to engage yourself and John Whitterick on various topics. In fact, John and Jane have got in touch with us. Thank you, John and Jane, for contacting us here at Red Alert Radio. And their message is, hi, John and Ceylon. We are considering doing a rebuttal letter for the council tax notice that will be published in our local paper next week. Would this be a good idea in order to uncontract with them or not? So far we have managed to see off bailiffs, and we understand the fraudulent court system, i.e. non-existent liability order. Have you any further info on things like charging orders, bankruptcies, etc.? Now, I know that answer could probably take up half an hour, but if you give us the Reader's Digest version on that. So a rebuttal letter about the council tax published in their local paper. Is that a good idea?
There are two... Well, there's probably more, but there's two thoughts concerning this, and I've got to say I don't know which one, if any, are correct. One is that, yes, absolutely, you need to rebut it, because they're saying this is what we're going to charge you, whether you like it or not, unless you rebut it. But the downside is you have 3 days from when it's published to rebut it. That's under contract law. The other thought is that they basically have a meeting a week or two beforehand. It may be longer, again, I'm not sure, where they decide how much they're going to charge us. And some are suggesting it's at that point you need to send stuff in saying, I'm not accepting this, get out of here. So which is the correct version, I don't know. But what I would say is it doesn't matter which is correct, as long as you understand that it's an unlawful tax against the poor in general.
And I know that you always say on your website, don't get into these things until you're absolutely sure of your standpoint, that you're sure of the law and you're sure of what you're doing. I mean, it's all right having the template letters, etc., but understanding them is another matter entirely. So I mean, you basically say to these people, research before you really jump into it.
Yeah, I would say to anyone, and don't get me wrong, I understand that, oh God, I've used that word that I never use, but I get that some come on there and are desperate and they just get the templates and bang them out and don't do enough reading as to see what, I mean, whichever company it is, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to name them because I don't want to publicise some of the lower parts of society, if you want to use that word.
Other bottom-feeding organisations are available.
That's
that
probably
sort of
a much better term.
Yeah.
But if you do have these problems with debt hounds, then simply go on to get out of debt, go down, if it's a debt collector, to the debt collector section, and look for the debt collector that you're dealing with. And then read all you can on that debt collector, and you will find out everyone else's dealings with them, what happened, how they replied, what they replied with, and you'll find that they just use templates. It's a template reply.
I always find that hilarious because one of their main responses to anyone who sends a letter to them is, "You've been looking at the internet, sending out template letters," and he's like, "Yes. You've been sending out letters from your own organisation as well, because we recognise what you've written." And I think this is the thing. It's almost like take the template as a starting point and then basically manipulate it so that it's almost your own words.
Yes, absolutely. And I know a lot of people may not have printers, and that's absolutely fine, because a written letter is even more powerful than a printed one.
Actually in writing, so they get the typed out DTP or anything like that, just do it by hand and make sure you keep copies, I suppose. Yeah,
well, what we point out is that, yes, they use template letters, yes, we have template letters, and they might say, yes, that's just a template letter off the internet, and yet, strangely enough, they never give the answer to the questions that were posed in any of the letters. Now, surely, what they'll come back is, under law, we only have to provide such and such for the Consumer Credit Act. Well, that's great. But I'm asking you for something else. I'm asking for your actual proof. Why wouldn't you want to provide that if what you were doing was absolutely lawful?
And this is the thing. What these template letters tend to have is basically proof of the accounting. And when you say that, you're not asking for statements, and they always seem to send out statements, don't they? For if they're going to send you anything at all, they send you statements. But that's not the accounting. That doesn't explain where they got their money from to lend you.
Well, often sorry, I'm just going to cut in there. Often you're going to realise it's debt collectors you're dealing with, and of course, they've actually bought the debt from the bank.
Oh, but they deny that. They deny there's any money transferring hands on that. Oh, no, we haven't bought the debt. Oh, no, not us. No, we haven't bought the debt.
Well, we know they have, because, you go to the CSA website. That's not the Child Support Agency. That's the Consumer Services Association. And what it actually says, go and have a look at it. It actually says they buy and sell debt. And that's actually what happens. Now, we've also, on the website, we've actually interviewed a bank manager, and this bank manager wasn't a sort of just a straightforward bank manager. He actually knew quite a bit what was going on. Happy to be interviewed by myself and some other truth seekers. And we actually asked him, he was actually quite disillusioned by the actual banking system. And we actually asked him, I actually said to him, look, if somebody else pays off my bank account, my overdraft, that is, are you still going to pursue me for the debt? He said, no. Okay, fine. Okay, so if that other person is a debt collector and he pays off my bank account or at obviously a discounted price, because this is what they do, they get a whole load of accounts, what they call delinquent accounts, up together and actually sell them off cheap. So I said to him, well, has he still paid off my account? And he said, well, yeah, I can see what you mean here. So can you see, by buying the debt, and this is what they do, they buy the debt, they buy it as a sort of bulk, and then this is why they offer you fantastic discounts, because they buy your debt for about 10p or less in the pound.
So if they can get if they can get 25p in the pound, they've made a profit.
Of course. This is the bank's given up on it a long time ago. The bank can't even be bothered to chase it themselves because they haven't lost any money. They'd be better off actually putting their time into lending out more money so that more people, so they can get more interest off other people. It's crazy scenario.
And I mean, I can exclusively reveal, and I will reveal on this show, that effectively I had a run-in with my bank. They were putting charges on charges, and it got to a ludicrous level. And I just went, I'm not paying this anymore. And used your 3 letters route, and then we went via various routes and bits and pieces. And effectively, they, as you say, they could never supply any of the information requested to prove the debt, and I never at any point said that I wouldn't pay it. I said, as long as you can prove the debt, I am more than happy to pay it. Eventually they passed it on to a debt collector, and then that debt collector then passed it on to another debt collector, who then passed it on to a debt collector who pretended to be a solicitor, who then passed it back on to a debt collector. And we're now in the situation where just out of interest, I thought I'd look on the Experian website, because they kept offering me a free trial of their service to see what it said about my credit score. Not that I'm ever asking for credit ever again, but I thought it would be most intriguing to find out. And I went on there and found that I actually got 2 strikes against my account, which I found quite hilarious. One was by a mobile phone company, and one was by the bank in question. So despite the fact that I said I would hold them liable for anything on that, I've still to chase them for some bills that I sent them 3 years ago, which the late payment fees on those must be spectacular now, because I did advise them of the late payment fee rates. But Experian effectively chased down both these debts and defaults, as they love calling them. The one from the mobile phone company, they folded like a pack of cards, and that was immediately taken off, just it being challenged, because I simply pointed out I've never heard from them directly. They've never asked for this money directly. They immediately passed it on to a debt collector, which happened to be one of the debt collectors that was familiar to me, and I was familiar to them from my dealings with the bank. So we have the situation now where Experian went back to the bank and said, what's the status of this? And the bank told them, and I have it in writing from Experian, the bank told them they no longer have any interest in the debt or the default, and that if I wish to discuss the default, which was in their name on Experian's site, I had to talk to the debt collector, who I'd already said is a third party, and I don't contract with third parties who I have no contract with. So I actually have it in black and white that what you are saying is true. They have passed on the debt, but they are such a disgrace, this bank. They will not say, well, we can't keep this default on the system because there is no longer a default. We've passed it on. Pedro has a question.
Yes, I was just wondering if you guys come across any situation where, for instance, really the question is, can a debt, when it's passed on or to a different debt collector, can that debt collector basically call himself, or when addressing the person that's allegedly defaulted, basically take on the company's name? Let's say for instance that if you defaulted on a credit card, can that new debt collector say that he's calling from that credit card company, or he just has to?
No, it can't.
He can't do that.
They can't do that. They play a little bit of a sort of smoke and mirrors game, whereby sometimes you'll get a solicitor's contact you, and when you actually look at the address or go on Google and you find out who it is, you realise that actually it hasn't gone from the bank. It's actually just another part of the bank. And then sometimes you think it's a debt collector, and it's not. When you actually start looking at the, you start checking it out. Actually, they're just they're just messing about.
Yes.
But when it does go to a proper debt collector, then the debt collector can't pretend it is Barclays. And sometimes what we do, we send the letters out, and you'd be amazed how quickly some of them fold, because as soon as they get the letters, they know that they're not going to get paid. So they say, oh, we've handed it back to our client. Well, they haven't. What they've done, they put it back. There's some sort of situation in place where they put it back into the bundle that they actually bought it from, and they obviously get a little bit of money back from them, and then someone else will pick it up and have a go. It's almost like you get like a feeding frenzy,
Yes.
And as Alex said, it's these are the bottom feeders, Because remember, these people are making money out of the poorest people or the most disadvantaged people in our community. The people that can't basically pay off their debts, and which would be fine if it was their own fault. But the fact is that the system creates the debt which can never possibly be paid off. This is the thing, because I can remember once I was actually I went to a meditation group where we all sort of like sat around and had a chill out Sunday, and this lady said to me, well, I couldn't possibly do what you do because I go to a spiritualist church and we're taught personal responsibility. And I said to her, well, with all due respect, I take my personal responsibility very, very seriously. And my personal responsibility, I feel, is to tell people about the fraudulent banking and debt collection system which is going on.
Right.
And I have no problems with that.
I think picking up on that, I mean, there's a personal responsibility, and probably the most some skeptics out there will say, well, you've used some money to purchase things, so you should pay that back. But I think what they do.
Can I answer that?
Well, please, no, go ahead. You're the guest.
Well, what I'd say to you, okay, so say if we were in the pub, okay, and you're moaning about how broke you are, and I said, look, I tell you what, I'll lend you £1,000, okay? And so what I do, I sort of count it out to you and say, right, I want it back in a month, mind, but there you are, there's £1,000, okay? And we meet up a month later, and you say, hang on, the last note, as I handed out the last 20 quid note, it was raining and the ink ran, and I realised that it was all counterfeit money. Now, if you realised that I'd given you counterfeit money, which wasn't worth anything, and I printed it on my little Epsom, inkjet printer, would you pay me back?
I think another issue is that some skeptics would think probably don't know as well is that a lot of these companies, they will, after the issues start where they freeze your account and that sort of thing, before that they've already basically charge you quite a few surcharges, fines on your balance, and you that you owe keeps creeping up until the point there where you can get the particular debt to freeze. But those extra charges, right? They just come out of the blue, and that's totally unfair. Also, a lot of these banks, obviously because everything's tied up, especially with credit cards and things, they're already insured for those losses.
Yes.
And that's another thing. They've already I think you mentioned earlier, they've already let go of that debt by selling it off, and they get it back. It's the same thing with fraud. With fraud with the bank cards, they insure us as well against that.
It's unbelievable. Remember that original credit card application, that has actually been securitized. So they've got the money back before you paid them 1 penny. So this is the whole thing, you see. They sell, whether it's a mortgage or a loan or a credit card application, they sell your signature on the piece of paper. That's called securitizing. And the Bank of England will bundle them up and flog them on. And so they've already been paid. This is why they sell them cheap to debt collectors for 10p in the pound, because they've already been paid. I mean, this is crazy. It's basically a system. The only thing of value at the end of the day is our labour. And it's almost like a system just to keep us busy and, basically steal our wealth. I mean, it's crazy. There should be enough wealth in this world so that everyone can feed themselves, clothe themselves, and live comfortably. But half the world's starving, more than half the world's starving, and those of us who are, relatively affluent are having to work bloody hard to, just to be able to feed, clothe, and look after ourselves. I mean, it's crazy.
We've had a text in from a guy called Stretch, And Stretch says, "Hi Ceylon, hi John. I can't find the YouTube post. What would it be titled under?" I'm assuming this is in relation to the Talbot shenanigans, I would think, Ceylon. So, I mean, are there actually YouTube videos up yet, or is that sort of coming soon?
There have been some put up, but they've been made private because we're going to put all of it together and make a much bigger video. And it's because we need to make it have impact. It will have impact anyway, but until we've sorted it out and we're basically doing what the TV companies do, which is polish it up and make it look really good, and that's what we're going to do.
Well, I tell you what. If you can send us the links as soon as they are available to us here, we'll put them on the show page for today. And that show page, Get Out of Debt Free, is on www.redalertradio.co.uk. So keep looking at the show page. We will update that with links and things as we go along. We've got about 5 more minutes. So here's Valentine.
This is just a really quick question, Alex, and it's for Ceylon. I just want to thank you for sharing that story that you shared with us, and I do apologise that you had to endure that, and also your friends as well. We're coming into a situation where people are really losing the plot, and we're seeing this with people who are in positions of power, who just have just a tiny bit of power, and it's going completely over their heads, basically. And I suppose all of this was because they're trying to get entry into the property, and by stepping their foot into the property, then they can have the right to do what they want to do.
Can I just stop you there?
Yes.
It's not property, it's someone's home.
Home, okay, fine, fair enough, yes.
They like to call it property because a property is like a phone or whatever, and you can buy and sell. This is
someone's home, absolutely, yes. And they don't have the right just to walk into someone's home, regardless of what's going on, and do the things that they want to do, obviously. And in terms of the locksmith, I mean, do they have the right to change the locks, in these cases of repossession?
Well, everything that happened on Monday was totally illegal, and it was also unlawful. The warrant was fake. But that's due to liability because, like I said, I think I said earlier, that the judge is not going to sign it because he becomes liable. And when it's found out that what he's signed is an illegal document, he becomes liable. That's why they put a stamp on it. So the answer is basically no, they don't have the right.
So there you go. I mean, in summation, in terms of advice for anyone listening today who is saying, well, this takes a lot of bravery, this takes a lot of knowledge, I don't know whether I can do it. Have you got any sort of advice for people who want to take the first step but know it's going to take a bit of effort?
Absolutely. The first thing is get on our site. But
Let's
also
get out of debtfree.org.
Yes, and also get on voidmortgage.com. There's an event section in there, and if there's an eviction going near you, I'm so happy that most didn't make it to the Port Talbot because that was a terrifying event. But most of them go a lot smoother without any fights, bruises, or anything. And get to one of these where we're stopping the banks, the illegal banks that have ripped us off forever. We actually stop their agents, which are the bailiffs and whoever else comes along. We're stopping. We're just physically standing there saying, no, you're not coming past here, and if they touch you, that's assault. And so get along there and you will feel so empowered. I doubt there will ever be another violent one as violent as what happened on Monday. I really can't see that.
So hopefully this is going to be the one that sort of stops people in their tracks, especially when the YouTube videos are up and these people are seen, and hopefully when they're seen they will be named. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a terrific show. I should imagine from the reaction that we're going to get from the podcast after this and through the website, we would love to do this again with you. Do you think that would be possible?
Definitely.
Excellent stuff. Well, thank you, John, and thank you, Ceylon. We'll talk to you again very soon. In the meantime, I have a public service announcement for our Peterborough listeners. Ready to switch, bring your bill day.